Hey guys, my name is Ryan, and we're back again with another Spirit Island video. Today is the 5th installment of the Aces series. If you are looking to cross the threshold into top difficulty games and get your first level 6 win, this series is for you. Today, we're looking at the Habsburg Livestock Colony, one of the two adversaries from Jagged Earth. Until the release of Nature Incarnate, we would just call this Habsburg. However, in the latest expansion, there was another adversary released from the same historical colonizing force. So if you're watching an older guide, any reference to Habsburg is referring to the livestock colony, this one that we're talking about today, since we did not know that there would be eventually a second Habsburg adversary. Since this one is the livestock colony, you might hear people refer to this one as Cowburg and mining colony referred to as Saltburg. But for me, I like 3-letter acronyms, so this one is HLS and the new one is HME. HLS is the most complex adversary in this series so far. With all the previous adversaries, there's at least one rule which you don't have to pay too close attention to, freeing up some mental space. But this mostly comes in the form of setup changes, such as all of Prussia, Sweden 2 and 6, England 2, and France 3. But some also have gameplay changes which are largely inconsequential, such as Sweden 1, England 3, and France 5. Every single level of HLS has a significant gameplay implication, so this is an adversary that you probably want to incrementally work your way up. Win a game at each difficulty before advancing to the next one, or else there might be too many new concepts pulling you in different directions, and it could be easy to get overwhelmed. HLS is all about towns. There are several modifiers to their towns, like movement and bonus damage. But I think the most famous part is the durable mechanic from level 4, Herds Thrive in Verdant Lands. It says, in lands without blight, towns are durable, and durable towns have +2 health. Similar to how England's +1 health modifier changes how we want to approach the game, so does this durable mechanic. Durable only applies in lands that do not have blight. Therefore, it is an incentive for us to take a little bit of blight. All damage powers lose efficiency unless they are targeting blighted lands. Now, there is a second incentive for us to take some blight, and that is the escalation. Seek prime territory. Like most escalations, it adds a town to the board. However, the difference here is that if we take some blight, we can reduce the amount of towns that we add. So with these two rules, we have two different incentives to take early blight, because it'll actually make the game easier. We'll be better at killing things, and less stuff will be added to the board. Thankfully, taking blight is really easy. You don't have to do anything at all. HLS 3, Fast Spread, is purely a setup change that doesn't affect gameplay. However, I didn't give it a pass earlier when I was talking about the complexity of the adversary. This simple change, removing a stage 1 card, means that we're going to get a stage 2 escalation on the second turn of the game. There's going to be just one Ravage before it pops. There is only one Ravage opportunity to add blight to the board before the escalation. So if we want to add one town instead of 2, we have to let both Ravages through. Now, there are 2 spirits which start the game with an additional blight on the board. We got Wildfire and Wounded Waters. And since they start with extra blight, this gives them a slight advantage over HLS since it's easier to negate the escalation. In fact, Wildfire, if they let the first Ravage through, the escalation will do nothing since there will already be 5 blight on the island. But before getting into more details on play patterns, I need to draw attention to the level 6 rule, Far-Flung Herds. It's a fairly simple rule, simply stating that their Ravages do +1 damage when there's a town in an adjacent land. But it's a major step up in difficulty. Like all damage bonuses, Defend becomes a little bit weaker. But the real power is because now a single Explorer can blight, and this loss condition, Irreparable Damage, is much, much more threatening. It reads, if you take blight off the card from Ravages that do 8+ damage more than once per player, you lose. So the first blight from a big ravage is okay, but the second one will kill you. The key here is that the blight has to come off the card. So Stone's Innate will negate this, as well as the self-sacrifice buys time event. But also, a Cascade will make us lose. In a Cascade situation, multiple blight come off the card as a result of a ravage. So in a solo game, we will lose from a single second blight add. Therefore, one Cascade from a big ravage will make us lose instantaneously. The combination of LC, escalation, and rules 1, 2, 3, and 6 create quite the puzzle to be solved in our first invader phase of the game. 6 different rules work together to make a drastic impact on our game before we even do the first spirit phase. And this is why I recommend learning HLS a little bit slower to get comfortable at every step. With 8 different boards and 4 different stage 1 cards, there's 32 different ways to open. But realistically, there's 3 ways things can go. First is where there's no threat and loss condition for the first ravage, and the starting blight is not active. For example, on board C, if we were to start in the jungles, they would both build, we'd have the gathers, we have 2 5 damage ravages, both of them in non-blighted lands. This is really simple, just let it go. If you have the means to save the Dahan, that would be a nice thing to do. If you can't save the Dahan, it sucks, but it's not the end of the world. You can just let this go, invest 0 actions into the first turn, focus on scaling up, setting yourself up with slow powers to get ahead of the next explorer. The point is that this is really easy. You don't need to do anything to solve this problem. The second thing that could happen is if the starting blight is threatened. So, for example, if we were to start in the wetlands, okay, you would build, double build, and then gather. Okay, this demonstrates both things that could happen, where you have a starting blight, and if we had chosen to gather this way, then we'd also be threatening a loss condition. So these are the 2 ways that things can get a little bit more complicated. And here, decisions have to be made. If we don't do anything to stop this blight, then we will flip the blight card on the first turn. Now, I've been on record saying that flipping the blight card is not a big deal. However, doing so on the very first ravage of the game is a little bit too risky for me. And so I would strongly recommend finding a way to defend this land or moving the blight out or basically stopping this ravage from happening. Over here, we have a loss condition. Now, we do get 1 loss condition for free. We could just choose to take a blight here and, it's not a big deal. But we do have to be careful. We have to make sure that we don't take another loss condition at any point in the game. This is much easier for spirits that have a ravage skip. Let's say, the second card is jungles, whatever, but then we go right back to the wetlands. Well, now we are forced to handle this problem. We can't kick the can down the road. So I strongly recommend playing a spirit with a ravage skip to handle that type of situation. But otherwise, even if you don't have it, it's painful, but it's not necessarily game losing on the spot to take that first loss condition on the first turn. So let's say that we choose to handle this by stopping the ravage on the 5 via defense or some other means, and we choose to take a blight here in land number 8. Well, that very next turn, we're going to be escalating. We're going to go straight into a stage 2. And we only have 2 blight on the board. It takes a 3rd blight to take 1 less town, to go from 2 towns to 1 town added. And that's really not a big deal. I think taking 1 extra town, maybe something like this, taking 1 extra town that would not have been there otherwise is a perfectly fine trade-off for not taking 2 blight. You could even make the argument that it's actually to our advantage. Because let's say that jungles were the next active land. Then we take, a blight here. We have not flipped the blight card, and we still get our blight in multiple different terrain types. We don't want to have all of our blight solely in 1 terrain type, because when any other land is active besides that one, it's just less efficient and less effective. to be attacking non-active lands. If we can ideally get a blight in every single terrain type, that would be the dream, because every single turn, no matter which land is active, we can be targeting one of those active lands with all of our damage powers. No matter which terrain comes up first, after the first turn, because of HLS 1, the invaders will be much more gathered together. And all powers are generally more effective at going tall as opposed to going wide, meaning that they can do a lot of damage in one land. There are very, very few cards in the game that affect multiple lands simultaneously. And I believe all of them are majors, which we're not going to be interacting with at the early part of the game. So the point is that Habsburg kind of solves itself. Let's just say we opened up with the mountains here, right? Build, gather. No matter what we come up with next, wetlands are looking fine, jungles are looking fine, and we have a disease here, so the sands aren't nearly looking as bad. So Habsburg pretty much solves itself, and things get much more peaceful going from turn 2 onwards. Since Habsburg solves itself, they have one little trick in the bag in order to fight back a little bit, and that is with this reminder card. It goes underneath the 5th card in the adversary deck, which means that it's going to be popping out on turn 4. Since we flip this card before the game starts, this is your turn 1 explore, turn 2, 3, and then turn 4 explore. You shift the invader cards, reveal this, and then you resolve it immediately. Since Habsburg will be incrementally solving itself turn over turn for the first 3 turns, on turn 4, if possible, it is best for us to go all slow powers. After this reminder card flips, that is the moment in the game where Habsburg is going to be at its absolute strongest. If we are able to play a bunch of slow powers and we can resolve and handle these brand new invaders right then and there, we'll be cruising for the rest of the game. HLS is a very complex adversary with tons of moving parts. I think it's important to mentally simplify the game into a few core principles, allowing us to make sense of the noise. So here are 3 keys to beat Habsburg Livestock Colony. 1. Play tall. Due to HLS 1, the invaders will naturally sort themselves into fewer lands. We get to pick which towns go to which lands, and we should prioritize having fewer lands with invaders, even if the lands with invaders are much bigger. Coupled with that, we need tools to deal with these big lands. Some spirits have this in their base kit, like Rivers Innate, but many spirits will have to dip into the major power deck. Since we don't have much to do in the first turn of the game anyways, it may be a good idea to grow a little extra across top track so that you have the energy to pay for majors down the line. Back-to-backs are particularly deadly since they are likely to threaten cascading loss conditions. We need to play proactively, or else we may wind up on the back foot, reclaiming a Ravage skip every turn and making no advancements on the board. That being said, a Ravage skip is the tallest form of defense since it scales indefinitely. Skip cards are a great tool to have in your kit, as it allows you to invest the rest of your actions into other proactive plays. There are many skips in the major power deck, which is yet another reason you should consider going for an early one. Second, slow on 1 and 4. Turns 1 and 4 are the best turns in the game to play slow powers. Since we want to start the game with some blight, fast control powers on turn 1 are not necessary. Most of the time, it's better to play slow powers, focusing on solving the second card in the invader deck. Letting the first card Ravage actually makes the game easier for us. It may be uncomfortable taking preventable blight, but it serves 2 purposes. First, Habsburg shoots itself in the foot and weakens its own escalation, but also we gain a tempo advantage. If we are able to solve the freshly explored land with a slow card, then the next turn we can play more slow cards and solve the next explore after that, and so on. We can get out ahead of the invaders and never look back. The HLS 5 reminder card is the adversary's way of fighting back on the board. But once again, if we play slow powers, we can address the explosion of invaders the moment they arrive. Turn 5, we are very likely to be on our back foot, reacting to the disaster that the reminder card created, and it's likely we're throwing down a bunch of fast powers on turn 5. So by playing slows on turn 4 and fasts on turn 5, we are maximizing our action output when Habsburg is at their strongest, which will help us not get overwhelmed. Third, Explorer and City Control. HLS is the town's adversary, so it can be very easy to think that town control is the most important part of winning. An important thing to remember is that HLS only builds if there are invaders in the land going into that build step. So if we have good Explorer control, we can prevent towns from building. Yes, HLS 1 will gather a town in, so even if we deny the build, we have not yet prevented the blight. So why is this good? First, there's less total plastic on the board, and that's always a good thing. But second, it reduces the likelihood of us getting caught in a loss condition. Starting in an empty land, if we were to explore, build, and then gather, okay, we have 5 damage in the land, then HLS 6 adds a +2 to the damage because of the adjacent town. This means that there's a 7 damage ravage, where 8 damage would be a loss condition. There are so many events which can add that +1 damage, and not just increasing aggression. Against any other adversary, I don't put nearly as much weight into playing around a 1 damage boost, since it just leads to an unfortunate blade and nothing else. For HLS though, these events often make us lose on the spot. A 4 damage ravage from a single town gathering into an empty land is much safer than a 7 damage ravage. Explorer control is great for having a safe early and mid game, but we also need to keep city control in mind too. The turn 4 reminder card adds a city to a coastal land without a city. If we have a city in every coastal land already, we've negated a quarter of the card. This is not something you can plan for though. You're completely at the whims of the invader deck. What we can plan for though is a terror level 3 victory. Since HLS only builds cities in the coast, there will be far fewer cities built over the course of the game. It can be easy to get stuck in the mental quagmire of all those town stacks across the board. But if we stay sharp and remember the win condition, we can get a terror level 3 victory even if the board is really ugly. Turns 4 and 5 are all about handling that reminder card, but on turn 6, we should take a moment and evaluate our fear situation and see how close we are to winning. In total, Habsburg has 14 fear cards. But since terror level 3 is much easier on this guy than any other adversary, it can feel like there's only 11. Stay focused, keep your eyes on the prize. As with all videos in this series, I'm going to recommend a low or moderate complexity spirit so that we can focus on the adversary and not on our spirit. So today, our ace is Rising Heat of Stone and Sand. Heat has the perfect set of powers to handle HLS. They specialize in tall lands with the unique Ravage Skip and an infinitely scaling innate. There's also Control with Call on Herders for aid, and in solo we can even use Gift of Searing Heat to pick off and explore. In a multiplayer game we do have to give out the gift, but they can get the same value on their board too. The absolute irrefutable best spirit against Habsburg is Stone, since they can completely ignore the LC, and they do have infinitely scaling damage. As mentioned earlier, Wildfire and Wounded Waters start with an extra blight on the board, which gives them a unique advantage. Now, if you don't want to play any of those spirits, some other great choices would include River, Green, and Fathomless Mud of the Swamp. In general, I don't think board selection is super important. However, board B is quite nice since we start in the middle. We can grow in any direction of our choosing to start the game out. We're not really forced to go any particular way or another. So I think board B is a great choice, but I don't think you can really go wrong with any of the boards. Make sure we get level 6 here, and let's go. All right, starting off in the mountains. So with this setup, we're not going to have any lost conditions, and we're not starting in the land with blight. So this is one of those situations where we don't have to do anything on turn 1. The disease here stops the build, 6 damage because there's no adjacencies. And here it's going to build up to 5 in the land, or build up to 3, gather goes up to 5, adjacency goes up to 7, also not a loss. So we can just go full slow powers. We're under no pressure to do anything in particular. Perhaps after this, maybe I should either record some gameplay for another day, or maybe tag it on to the end of this video what to do if it isn't so easy, because it's kind of useless to have a guide where everything goes right and no real hard decisions have to be made. Who knows? Maybe we'll get lucky with this game. Looking at these draft options, we have a few good choices. Savage Mob Beasts, it's more playable because we have a Blight already in the jungles, but it's not a great card, and we're not really well set up for Animal Threshold anyways. So because there are better choices here, I'm not going to take it. Shoreseeker's Hatred is probably the best card here. It's a good 2-element card, and it's the 2 elements that we care most about. That 2 damage would be really nice to hit before the first reclaim. Also, Badlands, Wild, all of this stuff is really good. Guardian Serpents, an event 4 just doesn't do enough. Starting in an empty land, as we talked about earlier, you're looking at a 7 damage Ravage. And so this is an example of a card that becomes dramatically less useful. Even though we're really good at making Sacred Sites, Guardian Serpents just isn't going to cut it. And Tormenting Rotflies is a solid card. Disease doesn't do nearly as much in this matchup as others because of that gather, because of that adjacency bonus damage. Shore Seas is certainly the pick. I'm going to choose to grow into the 4 just so I have access to the full coast. I don't really have to do anything in particular this turn. I'm going to do a Call on Herders, save this to Han, maybe set something else up somewhere. And to pair with it, we'll just do a Gift of Searing Heat for a little bit of fast energy. Turn 1 going out to someone else, that can be incredibly useful as well. Kind of just a gamble to see what would come up, but we guessed wrong, although I think we're still just going to hit this with a Call on Herders. We can kick these guys out. I think we'll put them into the Blight Land because that's where the invaders are weak. We can gather this town in, preserve this guy, and then keep this town this way. Maybe we'll clear out the 4. We'll see what comes up. Oh, hold on a second. Let's not push this way because that creates a loss condition. Yep, the geometry of Habsburg can be kind of tricky. So everything that I mentioned is a great idea, keeping this stuff in the Blighted Lands, keeping them weaker. However, it's not so great when you create loss conditions. What is very curious is if we push the town in this way, and maybe we'll put the Explorer in the 4, but the damage being dealt in the 7 did not change because we increased the amount of plastic in that single land, but we also eliminated the adjacency, and it's 2 damage either way. So the lands are a little bit taller now, a little bit more organized, but as we were talking about, that's a good thing. That's what we want. Okay, let's see if we can draft here. Any kind of defend is going to be effective. We have Dahan in both of our lands. If it's a small defend, even like that Guardian Serpents, it would work here in land number 5. Number 3, we're going to have to be a lot more picky about, although it's only going to be a 5 damage Ravage because there will be no town adjacencies. Ooh, okay. So we talked previously about how England can be shut down so easily with isolation, and Habsburg is absolutely another adversary that can fall prey to the powers of isolation. Check it out, Roiling Bog, targeting land number 5 will prevent any towns from gathering, which means that, well, we're just not going to have anything to worry about next turn. Even better is what if we isolate land number 7? Well, now it can't ravage. It can't explore. We're pocketing out the 6 and the 8. This land also cannot explore, though that doesn't make too big of a difference here. We can pretty much deny almost any explorer. Really, it's only the mountains or the coast where the isolate wouldn't help us, but it would solve the 5. The tricky thing here is that Steam Vents is a tri-element card, and it's just perfect for us. It's really easy to hit the triple Earth. We have a free Earth on top track, so even if we're playing things like Sweltering Exhaustion, it's very easy to get it. Tricky. So if we're planning on taking 2 Blight this turn, and if we isolate, so we're solved in the 5, then Sweltering Exhaustion is probably going to skip the 3. Which means that, so we Roiling Bog here, so we do this. So this turn, what are we going to play? Well, maybe we'll do, we do a Roiling Bog, then maybe something like a Stinging Sandstorm, maybe a Shore Seeds. It's hard to tell, but Steam Vents would be a nice pairing with these other guys. I do want to demonstrate how strong Isolate is in this matchup, similar to how we did with England. So we're going to take Roiling Bog. Both choices would work fantastic here. I think we'll do a Shore Seeds just because it's always guaranteed value. You never really know exactly what you're going to get from it, but it's always something useful. Ooh. Interesting. Tricky choice here. Losing 2 presence is pretty rough, but as a 0-2-1 spirit, we can... And we're a 0-2-1 spirit that doesn't mind hitting that double presence button, at least after reclaim. And gaining another power card. We could gain another power card and then double grow. That would get us our 2 presence right back without really slowing down our progression. Let's do that. We will go here and here. Okay, a lot of interesting choices here. Blood Draws Predators is kind of like a win more card. When you do a little bit of damage, you do a lot of damage. Now, oftentimes, against other adversaries, it might not be that important. But as we know, Habsburg goes tall. And this does more in the same land, aka it's tall damage. So Blood Draws Predators can be very effective for us. Considering we're going to be using Singing Sandstorm next turn, at the worst, we're going to kill an Explorer, if not something better, and we'll definitely get a Blood Draws Predators trigger. Entrap is a very exciting card. It's once again isolation, just like Roiling Bog. We talked about how good that is, but it also moves Blight, which allows us to always have Blight in the lands that we need work done. Very important thing to have. Nature's Connection, Elemental Boon, I'm a lot less excited by. We generally don't struggle to hit our elements, particularly because we haven't had any Dog Water draft yet. So we're not desperate for elements, and these cards also have text. Since we already have an Isolate effect, I'm going to take Blood Draws Predators. Yep, and look at that, it's pocketed, doesn't even explore. And we only have to add 1 town for the turn, so we'll just go right back here. Definitely going to want to do our Badlands over here now, since this land's definitely going to need quite a bit of work. So if we do a double growth, maybe we do something like this. And we have 3 fires here, so we could go Earth here. That'll give us the extra damage, but we need to... Well, first off, we need a Sacred Site. And then we want a Sacred Site here in the 3, so I don't know why I'm trying to get all cute with these presence placements. Let's just do the thing that matters. Just put it right here. Great, so we can skip this. Blood Draws. And we'll get plenty of value out of that Badlands with 2 triggers. Skip that Ravage. Build a city. And we'll keep things tall. We'll gather out of the 1. All right, we got the triple back-to-back in land number 3. That's a holy yikes if I've ever seen one. Okay, so we're going to get 2 damage. That's 3 damage, 4, 5 damage, 6, 7 damage. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Something has to survive in land number 3. One of the buildings will survive. Well, we can reclaim and roiling bog to defend the land. So we will leave 1 town alive. And that actually works out perfectly because we'll have one of these Dahan will get turned off. The second Dahan will do an extra damage though because of the Badlands, and the reduced health from our Sacred Site will clear land number 3, and we'll be sitting pretty. And ooh, a Carapist land will also take care of the 5. Great. So I did say that we want to play slow powers on this turn because we're about to get the wave of immigration. And that is true. So we have to ask ourselves, I think roiling bog here on the 3 is pretty non-controversial. But the question is, do we want to do a Carapace land in land number 5 in order to save ourselves a blight and kill this town? The benefit is that there is nothing to gather into any of these coastal lands. But we are also going to be less prepared to handle the explosion of invaders that is going to come. Because if we did a Carapace land and then a call on herders, we can full clear this land number 1. We can kick everything out if we drop the city, perhaps in land number 3. We also need to take into consideration that we want to ideally play a combination of cards that will give us some amount of slow damage. So a Roiling Bog gives us a fire. So if we get 2 more fire cards, meaning not Carapace land, we would gain access to slow damage. We could do like a Roiling Bog. Maybe we would do a Stinging Sandstorm from the 4 into the 1, perhaps. And then anything would work. Gift of Searing Heat, perhaps. Ooh, actually, I like Gift of Searing Heat here. That seems quite nice. So if we do Gift of Searing Heat and a Roiling Bog, we would need a Fire Earth card, and preferably be slow. I think Call on Herders would be a great pairing. Now, this does not necessarily mean I don't want to play this, take this Carapace land. I mean, these other cards aren't exactly good. A lot of duds in this setup. I think Carapace land is solid. 0 cost, defense 6. It's kind of hard to get better efficiency than that. Okay, definitely want to pay the sun. We could discard Blood Draws Predators, and I think that's probably fine. We could, our hand's going to cost 4. We could G2 going top bottom to play 4 cards. I think that would work perfectly okay by me. Just get a little bit of free fear, and we're not going to get punished from the city bonus damage because Habsburg's really not into cities. And look at that. See? We don't even need to play Carapace land. The fear card, we can always trust in the fear. We may gather. But I think I'd rather just let everything die. Great. So things look great right now. It's so sad. We get if you're playing like Habsburg 4, you're sitting in a beautiful position, the board looks great, and you can cruise to a victory. But we're not so nice and lovely to ourselves. We're going to get the the wave of immigration. Let's see, we have to do an escalation, and then with the wave of immigration, we'll add a city to either the 1 or the 3. I think I'd rather do the 3, utilize the Carapace land to defend it. And then we had to add a town to 5, 6, and 8, because they all have no blight. There's no choices there. So for escalation purposes, I'm not sure it really matters. I think I'm going to go into the 6, so that way when the 8 gathers, it pulls out of a non-blighted land, heaping this land taller. Hopefully we can double grow into the 7 and start kicking butt. Do have 2 damage, which I could use to just kill this land number 3 right here. We could also use it to empty this out, use Call on Herders to stop that, which will allow me to play these defensive cards and make our follow-up a lot easier. Stinging Sandstorm clears the 4. I like that. We really... Actually, with the way that the timing goes... Yeah, I think we're better off dodging mountains here. It's either mountains or wetlands, so it's going to get tall either way, and we're probably going to be forced to sweltering exhaustion either way. But let's see. Yeah, let's definitely get the extra energy. We're not going to make use of that extra fire right now if we go to 4. Well, actually, we would be able to get the 4 damage, but we don't need the 4 damage. I guess we could use that here in the 8 when it's not blighted. I think we should just take the extra energy in case we choose to go into majors. I find myself not often needing majors, but you know, it's nice to have that option available to us. We're still okay over here because of that Badlands and our Sacred Site. Oh, even better. That just clears it. Strife in a land with or adjacent to Beast. Ooh. Well, we could put a Strife here in land number 5 and then gather it into the 4. This way, if we choose to Stinging Sandstorm somewhere else, we can. We're no longer married to that line. Okay, that works too. And because we're stronger here in the 7, we're going to hope that we can avoid number 6. We do get mountains. You know, I think I'm okay with that because we already have really everything we can ask for to set it up. We'll go here. Because it is easier for us to grow into the sands and mountains, we can do so with our G2. I'm going to keep this present here and break up that Sacred Site. This land's about to be active. Badlands there will be quite nice. In fact, we could kill that city right now. I think we're okay. We could even just let this land go. It's fine if it blights. I'm not too concerned about it. I don't think it's worth investing too many actions. We could also just Roiling Bog it. So, do we want to kick this down to 1 Explorer, 1 Town? Or kick this down to just an Explorer? And I think we will target here. Fantastic. I think we're in a beautiful position. I think now we're cruising to victory. So let's take a moment and pause and think about all the things that have happened and bring it back to our keys to victory. So turn 1, turn 4 were the 2 key moments of the game. Turn 1, we were lucky with the initial Explorer being the mountains, I believe. Mountains. And we didn't have to really stress at all. I think I'm definitely going to put up another game where we aren't so lucky, just so that way we can at least consider what we would do in other situations. But then the other key moment was between the jungle and the mountains when we had that wave. And that big explosion of buildings that happened, just 4 more buildings being plopped onto the board, kind of a big old reset. We played just a couple cards in order to preserve ourselves for the turn, but then because we were able to play more slow cards and made a point to hit our slow power, that gave us 2 slow powers instead of just 1, that allowed me to not get completely get blown out by that big shift in momentum. And now we're on key 3, which is really planning for victory. How are we going to go ahead and win? I targeted the city and land number 2, just so that way, if we were to get a ton of fear, we've now successfully won the game. All we have to do is basically just stay alive and kind of just keep playing the game and accumulating fear like income until eventually we'll get around to winning. We do have quite a ways to go. I believe it's 6 fear cards for the whole stage 2, so that is quite a lot. But at the same time, once we do get there, we should just win. If we maintain decent explorer control, that wild card is pretty nice. Probably keep playing it whenever I get the chance, dropping wilds into these other coastal lands. That means that, we just keep chugging along. I think it's going to be pretty smooth sailing from here. There shouldn't be too many very challenging decisions. Yeah, we have yet another isolate. There's hardly any isolates in the deck, and we got a bunch of them right off the bat. Call to Guard would be kind of fun. Targeting the 2, so the town gets built, and because of the Badlands, it just dies immediately. That's pretty cute. I'll do that. So we got Call, we got Roiling Bog to handle this, and now we just find a way to do as much damage as we can, which I guess is only going to amount to 2 damage, but we're going to do it. Blood Draws would be a damage, so that could be a town kill as opposed to playing something with air for an explorer kill. It's also that's 2 damage actually. It does do technically more damage by going this way. Keep playing you. And maybe a Gift of Searing Heat's not a bad idea to throw in there. Yeah, we might wind up just using a Sweltering Exhaustion here in the 7. But we don't have much else to do. I guess I could, if we're going to be willing to Sweltering Exhaust this land, I could do a Call on Herders for aid. Just to prepare whatever happens next. Ooh, okay. The land with the most towns replace 2 towns with 2 cities. That changes the math completely in land number 7. So it's a good thing that we've got this Sweltering Exhaustion. This card is just so good. Having access to a skip makes everything so much less awkward against Habsburg. Highly recommend playing Skip Spirits first till you really start to get comfortable, and then you can try going without the Skip Spirits and find ways to play more proactively. Okay, looks like we can either go here into the 6 or here into the 7, and we could just get a free town kill, so don't see why not. Okay, Mountain Jungles, beautiful. I think it's best if we just pair up Ardahan, clear this guy out, and then we're just not going to have any trouble. There's no more like big dramatic things that are going to happen. It's a very normal explore build cycle. There's not towns lying around, so effectively Habsburg 6 has turned off. We don't need to worry about those adjacencies. Habsburg 1 is largely turned off because of that, especially because mountains are active. Anything that was going around is, done. So yeah, we're cruising from here. Let's just Call on Herders, pair you up, kick you out this way. Let's see. Let's drop a Wilds and a Badlands over here, just so that way everything has a Badlands. We get 2 damage. I believe this, if this has 2 HP on it, that would be worth hitting. I think it does have 2 HP. Because this is going to be 1 town, and, you know, just a little small innate can full clear the land. But this will double build and have all kinds of problems. Yeah, that's right. 1 Dahan had hit it. Okay, so we can Sweltering Exhaustion and just play a fistful of cards. No reason to play Carapace Land, so let's just gain another card. See if there's anything playable. We do want to prioritize Earth. We have enough air. If we need 1 more Earth in order to max our innate out. 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're going to get a 5th one with Bottom Track. So yeah, anything with Earth will give us a beautiful time. And Sky Stretches means that we could, I think we can fast clear this land. I'm pretty sure with Sky Stretches, everything here just dies. Well, that's just a beautiful thing. There we go. GG. Even if we got some useless, maybe like non-Root Biters type of card, we were going to full clear the land anyways in the upcoming slow. Very few events would have ruined that for us. So I'm going to run it back with some game situations where it's going to start a little awkward. I don't think I'm going to do full talk-throughs for these other games, but just kind of play through the opening couple turns where there is that awkwardness and probably, you know, double speed the rest of the game. All right, here we have an example where the starting Explorer is in a blighted land. So we just want to gain as much information as we can before we have to make a decision. So let's see what our options are. Razor Sharp Undergrowth, everyone's favorite card, not going to work here. So because there's already a Dahan, we could actually full clear it with Call on Herders for aid. Take a 7 damage Ravage here, assuming we go from the 7 into the 5. To be no adjacency. Nothing to gather in. And then we would just have to take an extra town for that first escalation. But then from there, we can just play a normal game. It gives us a little bit more flexibility and freedom on the follow-up escalation, which is nice. Call to Migrate isn't great. Might wind up just doing a Portents of Disaster just because none of these cards really matter, and we're going to have plenty of opportunities to draft for better elements anyways. Let's go here. We can just do this. Another option, by the way, could do like a Gift of Searing Heat into Stinging Sandstorm, but I think that's, well, actually, maybe it's not terrible. Right? Ping that off, ping that off. Save our Call on Herders for aid for the follow-up turn after that. Oftentimes, Stinging Sandstorm is kind of weak in the first cycle. Yeah, let's try it. Yeah, and then the Call on Herders can full clear the 1, and then we can just ignore the 3. This town will gather into the 1, so there'll be nothing to gather into the 3, so this will be pretty small anyways. Yeah, I'm actually, maybe it's too early to definitively call, but I'm not mad about that. Ooh, bunch of great choices. Gold's Allure. With Gold's Allure, we could pick up the town. Goes from the 2 to the 1 to the 5. Keeps this land empty. We take our Blight. And whatever explores next, we pick up with Gold's Allure. That seems very strong. So we Gold's Allure, and then I guess Call on Herders. Kind of proactively dealing with things. Might have no, like, these cards are both, like, kind of useless because we're just ahead of the game. Rip Dahan. It's funny. If there's still a town there, that would have died. Oh well, how about that? G. Willikers, Batman. We have to add 2 towns, so no matter what we do, we're gonna have to put something adjacent to the 3. But if we put both of them adjacent, we get the 2 damage from the gather and the 2 damage from the adjacency. So we definitely want to go here, and the other one really doesn't matter. Let's see. Do this. We could call on hers here to get rid of the adjacent town. Doesn't accomplish too much. I mean, we don't really have much of anything to do. It is something. The tricky thing is, yeah, I wanted it to blight now, and then skip it the next time through, because right now it's not a lost condition, but next time through it will be. Either way, we end up with 1 blight in the land, but by letting it through now, we don't have an LC. But I can use Sweltering Exhaustion to skip the Ravage right now, so that's something. Or sorry, skip the build. So at least that is something. Yeah, we're just biding our time here. I mean, Pact of the Joint Hunt kills things, and that means I can, use my Portent of Disaster. But, yeah, I mean, we're just kind of like kicking the can down the road right now, which may or may not be a good thing. Pact of the Joint Hunt does more damage, but this has fire. And that is off element. At least if I pick up this, the 2 fires and the 2 air will kill an explorer somewhere. Okay. Next door to a land with blight. Okay, don't mind if I do. Ooh, pushing the town. That is great. Well, I guess actually it doesn't do anything. Because, yeah, so what we want to do is actually push the explorers out. Yeah, because if we push the town out and then we don't build and the gather right back in, but yeah, this is what we want to do. We get 1 damage back, so that's fine. We can just kill off these 2 explorers. Unless if we want to use this to kill a city, because we're already getting our Portents trigger here. So actually, yeah, let's kill the city when we're given a free city kill. Why not? Gather a town into a coastal land. It's going to make no difference for this, right? Because there's nothing to skip and it gathers back. And here we definitely don't want to gather in. But I kind of, if I do take a, it does prevent a blight. That's what gathering does. It stops a blight from coming down, which means we get another town from escalation, which assuredly will go into a wetlands. This is unusual, shall we say. Okay, and it is after this next one we get our wave of immigration. So right now there's just a regular escalation. And I think we'll just go into the lands that we have presence.